And many people get to this point and they say, what can we do about this? And I think one of the answers I would say is that any event that brings good people together must be a powerful thing. What have you got?
Completely agree, Brian. I've attended 2 events just in the past few days that I think are informative for they were for me and will be for the viewers as well. It seems to be something that's starting to happen around the country. That this wasn't happening in 2019, and it certainly wasn't in 2020 because we were all locked up. But I think it's really great to see people getting together to help us figure out what's going on in the world, to look for answers, and to just be together once again. So the first one I attended was on Thursday evening. This was a photo of me with Angus Soutar. This was a Common Knowledge Edinburgh event, which, as viewers will know, it was chaired by Professor Richard Angus, and I'm on the executive committee. So this was on Thursday evening. Angus is the founder of the Northern School of Permaculture, which is based near Preston in Lancashire, for a talk about permaculture. And basically the basis of his talk was that it all starts with our food. According to his website of the school, the originators of permaculture said that permaculture is truly sustainable, not UN Sustainable Development Goals sustainable, but just sustainable in a real way. And this is all based on the design rules of nature, and permaculture works with nature rather than against it. This could include stopping deforestation, stopping pollution, things that the big food industry system does in its process of creating big food while they make us feel guilty for even existing at individual levels. He talked about the true diversity of living things, not the so-called diversity that we talk about in terms of equality, diversity, and inclusion or equity, but what is actually being pushed on Western culture currently is not the diversity of living things of different species in the world. And he had a lot of interesting sources in his talk, especially for a farmer. It was great to see a farmer that was so aware of things. One was a Guardian article from 2015, which cited research that found that the Earth has lost 1/3 of its arable land in the past 40 years. So I guess now that it's 50 years, there's even more, pointing to damage caused by erosion and pollution, raising concerns about degraded soil. And it showed an example of soil erosion on farmland in Suffolk. So Angus had a few things to say about so-called climate change and net zero. I have a short video here. We can see what he said.
And those seeking investment opportunities, especially in biodiversity and climate initiatives. So this is all the land's being valued on what they can get for putting solar panels on it, for building houses on it, for getting government grants to improve the environment, to prevent climate change.
And what he said, I did a short interview with him just to kind of have his talk summarized for me. What he said was on this next slide, as we can see here, that he said that modern agriculture is beating the soil into submission, which is a really important point. Farmers seem to be under attack. This is an attack on our food supply. It's not just about growing food. It's the whole food system that needs reshaping. And it was also great to see that he even talked about his awareness of the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab, the culling of chickens and vaccinating them, other things that I'm sure Charles Ballot would advocate for as well. I'm hoping that maybe Charles can follow up with Angus sometime because I'm sure they would have a great conversation. The second one that I went to was Mark Devlin, and UK column viewers will be familiar potentially with Mark Devlin. He launched his new book with us up in Edinburgh. He is if you're not familiar with Mark, he's a UK-based club and radio DJ, has a long history of doing that. He's now a music journalist and author. He says that on his website in 2010, he underwent what he refers to as a conscious awakening, bringing a new awareness of what's really going on in the world. And his special area of interest was how this ties into the mainstream music industry and the way in which A-list artists have been used to manipulate and mind control the masses in line with a much larger agenda. I have just some photos I've put together, if we can show those, of the event. His new book is called No One's Dad's a Plumber. He called it this because, as he wrote on page 1 of his book, rock stars' dads, builders, dockers, plumbers, in rather short supply, I'm afraid. Generals, admirals, and politicians, on the other hand, no problem. His point being that these rock stars are born into elite families, and frequently they are selected and groomed to be rock stars from a very young age. Here's a video I took of Mark during his talk telling us why he chose to release this book this past week in particular.
Wanted to do it at the time of the spring equinox because The controllers of organised society, the sick ones, the dark occultists, often launch their stunts and their psyops around about this time of year. So this is the launch for my new book. It's titled No One's Dad's a Plumber.
So he went on to show this next slide here, called The Season of Sacrifice, regarding blood rituals and dates. And along with it, what he said was, quote, "This time of year, the vernal equinox is highly energetically charged, and the occultists know this, which is why they launch so many of their events around about this time." And we've got a list here of some of them that happened throughout the years. There are many others, but there's a heavy concentration of these events around the time of the spring equinox. This was followed by a slightly altered version of Boris Johnson addressing the country, which I showed at the start of the news, reminding us that the 23rd of March was the 5th anniversary of us telling us we were going to be locked up with fraud, treason, and genocide across the front of the podium instead of something like hands, face, space, or whatever propaganda they were using. In his book, he said that a central theme is that the truth is placed in plain sight, which, Brian, I think you've said before sometimes. Many of the names that you would expect to hear came up in this talk, talking about pop and rock stars related to so-called mysterious deaths by drug overdoses, which are apparently frequently found dead in bathtubs, which, if you think about it, that has happened. We seem to think that's a signature of the handlers that control the stars and decide what happens to them. Many names that won't surprise people came up, like Jimmy Savile, Sean Combs, or P. Diddy, or Diddy Daddy, or whatever he's being called now. Michael Jackson, George Michael, Elvis, Amy Winehouse. He talked about how social engineers and behavioral scientists use bands to get things to happen in the world that they want to see happen through applied behavioral psychology. And those who control the music industry make the stars lose their integrity and their soul once they cross a line in their fame and money, and they're no longer able to say no. I also learned that words such as pasta, pizza, hot dog, and chicken are code words for pedophilia, which is where pizza cake came from. I didn't know that. Mark gave a lot of examples of how pedophilia and other evils make their way into popular music, including these lyrics, for example, from a song by Bruce Springsteen, "I'm on Fire." "Hey, little girl, is your daddy home? Did he go away and leave you all alone? I got a bad desire. Oh, 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 I'm on fire." It was also interesting to learn that a 12-year-old Phil Collins of the band Genesis, I have a photo of that, was present at the famous Hard Day's Night concert by the Beatles in 1964 that made them so popular in America. He was a paid actor in the audience. And the question was asked, why was Jeffrey Epstein at the Eurovision event in 1985? I've got a photo of that as well. There he is. Jeffrey Epstein, 1985. The album cover for the album Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin has little naked girls on it. So there are plenty more examples from the talk and much more in the book. So I would highly recommend checking this book out. I've got a copy, signed copy, and I can't wait to start reading it because it's really fascinating, but very disturbing.
Thank you very much. Some really serious stuff there, but people coming together and teaching each other what's happening is very important. And when those people go and talk to other individuals, wherever they may be, perhaps the Tesco checkout queue, information starts to spread. These are little seeds of knowledge which then begin to spread amongst the wider population. So there is a lot we can do. We better finish there. I'm going to say thank you to you all. Ben, Sandy, Diane, for joining me today. A lot of information in today's news. Please, for the audience, if you can share it and spread the word, spread the information from the UK column, we'd be very pleased. And don't forget those remaining few tickets for our UK column live event. It will be great to see you there. We must end now. Thank you very much for joining us, wherever you are in the world. We will be back at the same time on Wednesday. If you're a UK column member, stay with us for UK column extra in a few minutes. Bye-bye.